Hello and welcome everyone to this video. In this video, we would be implementing microservices from very scratch and also well established communication between them. So we would be sending a request from microservice 1 to the microservice 2 and then we will be getting the response back to the microservice 1. So this is what the agenda of this video today. And if you have not seen this video where I have discussed about the microservices in detail for beginners, I will highly recommend you to do watch this video out first. Let's start with the implementation. So here in this video we will be implementing using Spring Boot, but the concept remains same for Node.js, Python, anything. You can just implement the same concept over there. Only the syntax changed, but this is as this is an architecture video, so you can just replicate this particular architecture to your favorite language, whatever you're using, maybe Node.js or Python or Django. And this is a very simple representation of our application that we're gonna build. So this will be our service 1, then a request will be sent to the service 2, and the service 2 will do return us a response back to the service 1. The communication is successfully established. So that's what the agenda is. Okay, so now just go to a new tab and search for Spring Initializer. So what is this particular site? It is nothing but a official site provided by Spring Boot itself to initialize your Spring Boot application. It is just like how you create your npm projects using the command line. It's the same thing, just in the UI form. Okay, so you will be creating your projects. So in this step you will be initializing your project. So in the very first we need to provide a group ID. So here I will just change the name to YouTube. Okay, then artifact name will be service 1 say. Okay, then I will keep everything as default because I'm using Maven only and the Java language will be Java, and I'm using this latest Spring Boot version, the stable version, and then we'll be using Spring Java 21. And just one more thing, I will need to add Spring Web dependency. Why is it so? Because we will be creating a RESTful API, right? We will be sending the request using a REST API only. So we are done with the setup and just download this. So your service 1 is totally ready, and the very same way you can just create service 2 as well. So now we are already done with the initializing of project. So just let's extract this out and open in the IntelliJ. So here we go, we have both the zip files over here. Just select them, extract here, and we do have both the projects ready. I will just delete this zip file, I don't need that, and right click on this project and open the folder as on IntelliJ. So once your IntelliJ is opened up, and you will get something pop up like this, that your IntelliJ is able to see we have 2 Maven projects in this particular one folder. So it is asking us to load it. So let's click on the load, and it will take some time. And in case you are not getting this particular option, just open IntelliJ and click on this option and then open and select that folder. So we can see now it's all loaded up, and then we can just see what is there in the service 1. So we have all this folder structure. It's exactly the same thing, just the name is different. Okay, so let us now start with creating an endpoint for this application. Okay, so we will start with the service 1. We will create a new Java class which will be our controller class. Then we'll name it a controller, and this, by the way, this is a shortcut hand to create a package. If you write controller dot and then the class name, IntelliJ will automatically create that package. Let me show you how. Service 1 controller, some random name. Okay, so we can see both package and classes are created now, and we can start with the normal our basic annotations, and we'll create this particular class as a REST API class. And those who are not with the Spring Boot background, just for them it is a way how we can initialize a class as a REST controller class, and then we can introduce our endpoints in this particular class. This is how the syntax in the Spring Boot works. So then we can just create a get mapping. So basically this is the syntax how we create an endpoint, okay, in Spring Boot. So this is basically a get mapping. So whenever get call is triggered, this particular endpoint will be called, and we don't have any path right now. We can provide a path if you want. So this is how the path will look like. Get data. Okay, and if you want, we can create a generic request mapping for the entire class, but we can keep that as it is right now. Okay, then we can just provide the logic for this. Then we can have a string called downstream, or let's have that outside the class because that particular URL can be accessed by anyone. Let's make it final string. And by the way, it is a not good practice to create all these things in the controller, but it should be an adapter or service class. But for this simplicity of this video, I'm creating over here only. Okay. Okay, so I will update this URL once we are done with the service to implementation. Okay, so I have created a placeholder for right now. And first of all, we will implement the service to, and accordingly we'll do the REST call over here. Okay. And basically we would be returning that over here, right? Okay, so in this particular line, we will be calling the downstream and updating the response. Okay, so this is a placeholder for now. Then we can just move to service 2, and here we will be getting our RESTful API call. Okay, so before that, we will create a controller over here as well. Then we'll do the same thing. I will just add it, do side by side comparison so it's easy. Okay, REST controller, then we can have a, we don't need any downstream call over here, so we need not to have this particular string over here. Instead, I can directly make a get mapping and will provide a value over here. Let's have a different endpoint name, just having a data. Okay, then this particular endpoint should have a business logic, that is fetching the data from somewhere and then returning it. But for now, we can just return any random data from directly over here. Okay, so I will be just returning a string. So very simply, we have just written a simple string to the upstream application. And if you are not aware what is downstream and upstream, it is a just normal terminology how we refer to the microservices. The microservice which calls the other microservice is known as the upstream, and the microservice that is being called by another microservice is called the downstream. Over here you can see service 1 is calling to the service 2, so this will be termed as upstream application and this will be termed as downstream application. It is a relative term. Okay, so let us now just implement the REST API call, then we'll run the application and see how it is exactly working. So now by this point of time, we have created successfully 2 microservices. Okay, but the problem here is both the microservices don't communicate. Let's create the communication part. So we have already added this comment where we will be doing a RESTful API call and we'll be getting that data from the service 2. So to establish the communication between both, we need to do some changes. So the first change that we need to do is go to this application properties or maybe application YAML file. In the Spring Boot we have this, and if you are using any different language, it is for your reference. This file is just for the configuration thing, like you can change the port number, application name and other things. So here we just need to update our port number of the application. And why is it so? Because by default the Spring Boot application runs at the port 8080. For this application also it will run at 8080 and this one also will run at 8080. So that will create a conflict. So instead we will creating our own ports. So how that needs to be changed, this is how the syntax goes. We will mention server dot port equals to. So now we have defined where our microservice will be available. That means our service 2 will be available on port number 8092. Okay, so let's go to the service 1. Then we'll create a RESTful API call to port number 8092. So this is how we need to do over here. Just create a final REST template. There it is, REST template, perfect. Then REST template. Then it will ask for a constructor. Okay, and just I add a constructor. So we are doing the constructor injection. You can do this using the Lombok as well, and if you're not aware of this, no worries, you can skip that part. And then we can just one more thing, you can make these as private. So now we will make the downstream call over here, and how exactly it works. We will create a REST entity which is the response type for any REST template call. Okay, so here it will be a string because the return type will be our string that we have already mentioned here, because we are returning string, so that's why we'll be writing string over here. And if you have any different DTO, then you need to deserialize that. Okay, and by the way, the Spring Boot deserialize it automatically, so it's not an issue. Then we can just move on this, and let's say have a response. Okay, and this was just for a bookmark, just removing it. No, not needed anymore. Rest template dot, then we'll do a get call to the downstream because we are mapping it with the get mapping. Okay, so it is a get call, and accordingly I will use the downstream URL. So basically what does this mean? We are asking the REST template just do a get call to this particular downstream and typecast the response into this particular class, which is a string class in our case. It can be a DTO as well. And then we can just have a sout, or you can use loggers as well. Then I will just print this response so that we are across what is coming, just for debugging purpose, which is a good practice and recommended one as well. Okay, let's do a response dot get body. What is get body? In the response we have multiple things, so we are just getting the response out of that, and need to do the same thing over here as well. So we are done with the downstream call. Just change the URL, which will be 1992 because the service 2 is available on 1992. So accordingly, and what is the endpoint name? This is data. So now we have provided the downstream path, and so that is all about this. So this is how the communication gets established in this. So let us run this application and check. But do you think, for those who know the Spring Boot, will this work? If your answer is no, then congratulations, it's correct, because we haven't defined this particular bean. So Spring Boot doesn't know where to get this bean from. So we need a configuration file. And for the non-Spring Boot developers who is watching this video, just for their reference, in the Spring Boot we have a configuration thing where we define beans, which are singleton bean that the application can inject from anywhere to anywhere. Okay, so it simplifies the thing. But in your case, you can check that accordingly just using the REST template. That is it. So you can just check how in your application or in your framework the HTTP call is made. Accordingly, you can just create a HTTP call. So here I will create a config folder, then we'll create a config file. So now we have created a bean as well. So now we are expecting this should work. Just go to this one, run this in the debugger mode, and run this as well in the debugger mode. So both our services are running as expected, and the service 2 is running at the port 8092. Okay, perfect. So let's do a downstream call and see what happens. So I will be hitting to the 8091, which is our service 1, and let's see what happens. And see, we are getting the response from downstream. And if you remember, this particular message was being sent by the service 2, and we are fetching that data using the service 1. So in the very first, the request goes to the service 1, then a downstream call is made to the service 2, and then we are getting the data. Let's just do a recap. We are hitting this endpoint, then this endpoint is hitting to this endpoint, which is then this particular endpoint is returning this particular message that we just saw in our postman. So this is all about the microservices and how they communicate. So you can implement many features, create different databases in the different services. And if you have not watched the complete theoretical video of this microservices, do check this video out. I will provide the link in the I button and the description. And if you are not across what is this playlist is all about, I'll highly recommend you to watch this video, which is the first video of this playlist, and here I have described everything what we will be covering in this playlist, and would be creating a end-to-end full stack application which is totally microservice based, and we have authentication, gateway, and lot more things. And if you like this video, do press the like button and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you liked anything, you have any question or any feedback from you. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.